By the time they became patrons, all of them had some sensitivity to the podcast and tended to listen to it without question thereafter. There lay the danger. O'Drade pressed for constant improvements, even tiny ones, to introduce change into their episodes. Randomness. There's some no absolute patterns that others could find and use against them. Some more randomness. Well, that's pretty good. I have a bay leaf here. Here's some random bay leaf foley.
That's right, folks. Y'all are never going to find patterns in this podcast.
Now I have bay leaf residue all over my fingers.
Oh, no. Look, stagnation is the death of any creative project, so I'm with O'Drade on this one. Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu.
My name is Leo.
And Leo, we're continuing our journey through Chapterhouse Dune, the final book in the Dune saga.
Oh, I love it.
By Frank Herbert himself.
Yeah. Love it so much. What a good book. What an insanely good book.
It truly is. Okay, well, we're here to talk about 3 chapters in particular. And so before we dive in, let's take care of some housekeeping and make Shout Out Mapes proud. Oof. Beginning, of course, with our spoiler warning, folks.
Yeah.
As always with these book club episodes, there will be no spoilers today beyond the pages and books we've covered thus far on the show. So as long as you're caught up and as long as you've done the reading, you are good to listen today.
Indeed. And as always, a huge shout out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons, Daniel Dion, Seth Redengreer, Brad Hutchins, Kevin Mohinram, and Roger Young.
Wow.
I keep suggesting to Abu that we rename all the streets on planet Gom Jabbar after you. And then Abu's like, they're not dead yet. Why are we doing that?
They are alive. They are supporting patrons right now.
It's as if I can still hear their voices, Abu.
Yeah. It's tough to... Can you in memoriam something for someone who's still alive and paying you and supporting your podcast?
Yeah,
it's
but
tough, you know? That's my only pushback. That's my only critique.
Yeah. I keep putting up black and white photos of like, never forget this person. And he's like, they're still alive. And I'm like, I know. I just want you to remember.
Daniel is still alive. He just messaged me in the Discord.
Yeah,
like,
but
what
he's
are we
great.
doing?
Don't forget him. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
We'll name a street after him once he's dead.
Oh, true.
Wow, that was a morbid way of saying thank you and expressing our gratitude, but we truly do mean it from the bottom of our hearts. Of course, that thank you and that gratitude extends to all of our patrons at every level who help make this show possible. Some way, somehow, we'll figure out a way to name a street after you all as well.
Indeed. And listen, if you are out there experiencing some subscription fatigue and you only have it in you to do a one-time donation, we do have a link for that in the episode description. That is another way to get a street named after you and to get some black and white posters of your face posted around town square.
In memoriam. All right, housekeeping out of the way. Let's talk about today's episode.
Yeah.
Y'all know the game plan for these book club episodes. We will begin by summarizing the 3 chapters assigned for today's reading. Then we're going to dive deep into a thematic takeaway. Today's is particularly interesting to me because I'm quite passionate about it. And then finally, we will be wrapping up by chomping down on a couple of very yummy spice morsels. So before we get into all of that, folks, take a break, prepare yourselves. We'll be right back after a quick break to dive into these chapters. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, I hope you enjoyed your break. Hope you're ready for some new chapters in Dune, Chapterhouse of Dune, whatever the book, this book is called. Let's start our discussion with our first assigned chapter today, and that is chapter 13. Our first chapter today joins Odrade, the goat herself,
Truly,
who has made a habit of hanging out with Bene Gesserit acolytes during mealtime. Why, you might ask? Well, I might tell you, it's because their poker faces suck. Reverend Mothers, fully awakened Reverend Mother, they don't show shit. They don't tell you anything. They're all playing 5D chess. The acolytes, they like panic when the Reverend Mother Superior enters the room. They have no chill. And so she's able to get a better like feel of the pulse of Chapterhouse by hanging out with these less trained, less careful members of the Bene Gesserit order. So, as usual, this is a pattern in this book. We are spending most of the chapter in Odrade's thoughts, reflecting as she's kind of thinking about the desert that's growing and this image, this nightmare image of being on the tightrope with being chased by an axe-wielding maniac, probably dressed in sexy leotards, and the axes are a metaphor for feet, you know? That's the vibe. Now, during her slig pork meal,
yum,
sweetest pork this side of heaven, she decides it's time to visit Shiana in the desert, and she drops some hints that there's a test that Shiana has to pass. Quote, Shiana must have no forewarning. I must be sure she is the one we need. There were questions for Shiana to answer. End quote. Shiana, what's 7 times 56? Quickly.
Quick.
No forewarning.
Quick, don't think about it.
And if she gets it wrong, oh, she's not the one.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate a pop quiz.
But Odrade loves pop quizzes. It's one of her favorite things.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Now, also, she thinks back on a chat that she had with Merbella, and I really get the impression that pop quizzes included, she's always challenging and testing and pushing and teaching the young honored matre that they have captive for the last 10 years in the ship.
Absolutely. And it's because Merbella's important.
Yeah.
At some point in these chapters today, I recall an Odrade thought where she thinks about how important Merbella is. Everything hinges on Merbella playing her part in Odrade's schemes. So makes sense that she's constantly over there in the nose ship, constantly challenging and pushing this honored matre.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to say quickly, in our takeaway last episode, we talked about the honored matre as kind of an aside. During that takeaway conversation, we talked about food. I was talking about the garlic beans that the honored matre, like the recipe that they salvaged from the library. With that in mind, I was looking at this script, and it seems really poignant that Odrade is commenting on the slig pork in this section.
Yes.
Like,
oh yeah,
she talks about how the chefs, the cooks, clearly adjusted her recipe, adjusted her meal for her nutritional needs. Someone requested, hey, what is she eating today? Let me make sure this is perfect for her. So they've tuned it to exactly the nutritional needs that she has. But it's a little bit overcooked. And what a fucking incredible condensation of Bene Gesserit life.
Yeah.
That you have this like optimized to the nth degree, but it misses the mark of being an enjoyable, delicious meal. And I would just say on record, I would bet fucking Solaris that Dama, head honored matre, I bet she takes her slig pork extra rare with like the perfect sauce and just like a perfectly paired wine that's just so like exactly what you want.
Right.
She enjoys her meals. I'm sure of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would not challenge you on that bet. I would say I agree.
Good. Sweet.
Yeah, I had the same exact thought about the food and the fact that food comes up in back-to-back chapters.
Yeah.
The last chapter and then now today's chapter. It feels very intentional on Frank's part. It feels like more commentary on the differences between the honored matre and the Bene Gesserit, as we talked about in our last takeaway. So I'm glad you called that out. So
eventually, the acolyte next to Odrade kind of hey. And we're introduced to Aloana Streggy. And she asks Odrade, she's like, hey, Reverend Mother Superior, what up? It's your girl, Streggy. I actually have a question. I submitted a report and haven't gotten a response.
Yeah.
You need to know because I know it's important to you because it has to do with the orchards, which I know you're a fan of. Now, during this brief conversation, O'Drade decides this person's great. Streggy, great. 10 out of 10, love her. She's wonderful. And she likes her so much, in fact, that she gives her a new job assignment. She's like, hey, yeah, whatever you're doing. Oh, you're like handling the maps or something? Yeah, whatever. You have a new job assignment, actually. How would you like to be a horse? Streggy is like, what the fuck is happening right now? And actually, and O'Drade clarifies, it's not just that you're going to be a horse. Okay. I want you, quote, to carry a young child on your shoulders to move him more rapidly than his short legs will carry him. End quote.
Okay.
And that, of course, raises 1.5 million questions.
So many questions.
None of which are addressed. And of course, Streggy, being a good Bene Gesserit acolyte's like, all right, bet. I'll be a horse. Sure. Whatever you need.
Yeah.
I'll be the best goddamn horse you've ever. Like, clop, clop. I'm here for you. You know, just great. And then the conversation ends. They're like, all right, sweet. Report to the stables for horse training, I guess. Now, back in her office alone, O'Drade actually reflects on that moment as being way bigger than any of us knew it was.
Yeah.
This is indicative of the beginning of a plan and the actual, like, this is the first domino being knocked over in the long Rube Goldberg machine that is whatever she's got cooking, whatever plan she's got cooking.
Right.
Her plans within plans within plans are suddenly moving forward, perhaps carried on the shoulders of Streggy, the acolyte who dare interrupt her mealtime.
Right.
Now, of course, what exactly these plans within plans are, we have no idea, but we do get a hint from her thoughts. Quote, now Duncan must restore our Bashar's memories. A delicate assignment.
Ooh.
End quote.
Wow. More on that in just another chapter.
Yeah.
But for now, let's move on to chapter 14. This next one is a short one. We join Marbella in the no-ship practice room where she is doing some exercises and really pushing herself to the limit. Through her thoughts, we learned that Marbella is really fucking stressed right now.
Yeah.
Actually, she's trying to burn off some stress and anxiety.
She's been doom scrolling on TikTok. I know the feeling, yeah.
Exactly. She doesn't have access to TikTok, remember? Her and Duncan
even worse.
have those parental controls on the computer.
Oh, shit.
They can't go
Guided
to
access?
TikTok.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Try to guess the passcode.
0000000.
Typical Bene Gesserit password, yeah.
Marbella, through her thoughts, we learned that she just had a recent chat with O'Drade, one of her typical chats with O'Drade that she's having a lot of these days. And this one has really shaken her. The Bene Gesserit lessons that she's been undergoing and the lessons, the one-on-ones she's been having with O'Drade are clearly having an effect on this young honored matre. And she is very much so sliding into the Bene Gesserit's open arms.
Yeah.
And by the end of the chapter, as we all know, she is fully committed to becoming a Bene Gesserit. It's a really jam-packed chapter, despite how short it is. And actually, we're going to unpack some more of these ideas later in our takeaway. So for now, I'm going to breeze through the summary.
Sure.
Quickly, we'll revisit this chapter in a little bit later in the episode. So after failing to shake this mood that she's in, Marbella suddenly collapses. She has pushed herself too far past her own limit. Luckily, Duncan is there. He enters the room and calls out for help. And because of the comm eyes, because they're constantly being watched, within minutes, a Suk doctor arrives. And the Suk doctor's diagnosis is one that I'm quite familiar with, and I'm sure you are too, Leo. Marbella's burnt out.
Oh, girl.
She's pushing herself too far.
Yeah.
She needs to ease it back, take her foot off the gas pedal. She has gone beyond her limits, trying to apply herself to these Bene Gesserit assignments and coursework that she's been given by O'Drade and her other proctors.
Yeah.
O'Drade, later in the chapter, visits her in the hospital as she is resting up. And this is where Marbella, makes her big declaration. Quote, I've decided I want to be like you. End quote. I want to be a Bene Gesserit. She is converted.
Insane.
Folks.
I love Odrade's like lighthearted response where she's like, "Oh, splendid. Just so you know, I've never fucking burnt myself out to the point of killing myself. So if you want to be like me, hey, fucking chill. Take a nap, my girl.
Don't do that again."
Yeah.
Exactly. I did think that was powerful. It's like, you want to be like me, you look up to someone like me, don't make the mistake you just made again.
Take care of yourself.
I wouldn't do that.
What a good message too, just from someone like, hey, cool. Yeah. No, like, but take care of yourself. And also something for sure that continues to drive home how different as we are talking this whole book about how similar the Bene Gesserit are to the Honored Matre, but like, what a microcosm of difference there, where I'm sure Dama would be like, "You're weak. Don't be weak." Whatever.
Yeah, you collapse.
Weakling. Piece of shit. Meanwhile, Odrade is like, hey, glad you're in good spirits, but take care of yourself because you're important.
Definitely push yourself to your own limit. Don't measure yourself up against anyone else's limits.
True.
Learn your own. Push your own. Go past your own.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with anyone else. I did think that was a really powerful underlying message in this chapter.
Love it. Yeah.
So to wrap up the chapter, we are back in Mirbella's thoughts. She's in this hospital bed. Odrade has left, and she is thinking back on this oath that she clearly took like in between books at some point before the Bene Gesserit proctors. And she recalls that at the time she was being cynical, right? Raise your right hand. I swear, blah, blah, blah. All enemies, domestic, and blah, blah, blah.
Whatever.
Sure. The ceremony meant nothing to her at the time because she was still an honored Matre. Yeah. But now that she has committed to this course, committed herself to the Bene Gesserit and been converted, she finds new meaning thinking back on the words she spoke during that oath ceremony. And the chapter ends on this really beautiful note. This is the final sentence in the chapter. Quote, "She realized that she had not been physically or emotionally prepared for this moment. Tears flowed down her cheeks." End quote.
Beautiful. Well, in our final chapter today, we join Odrade. It's a very Bene Gesserit heavy book. This, as she conducts an inspection of Central. And she's looking for things that are running too smoothly. And I want to share this full quote because I think it's probably one of the best quotes in Dune. So much better than Fear is the Mind Killer.
This is like a personal top 3 for me in the whole Dune saga.
Fully agreed. Quote, "Show me a completely smooth operation, and I'll show you someone who's covering mistakes. Real boats rock." End quote.
Oh my God.
Fuck. Dude, Real Boats Rock is such a good tattoo idea. Oh.
Yeah.
So much better than Fear's the Mind Killer. What are we doing? What are we collectively doing, folks? Oh, so good. This quote, "Real Boats Rock," I think just about makes the whole book worthwhile because it's such a good concept. The idea that
it is.
Like, there's always going to be things that go awry. Always. Guaranteed. So the question is, if something appears spotless, it's because someone is covering up those little mistakes and hiccups. So she's looking for those little moments. Also, love the ocean metaphor, right? Sea child.
That's right.
There's a lot of water imagery in Odrade's inner world, and the idea that she's going,
of course,
hey, it's the movement of the water, it's the unpredictability of the ebb and flow of time and chance. It's gonna lead to little things here and there, and that's what you need to be aware of. That's just gonna happen, It's so good. Now, Belanda and Tamerlane have joined Odrade on this little walk, and she's kind of going, oh, they're teaming up on me a little bit because they're worried about my tricky plans and the things I'm trying. And she also wonders, do they suspect what I'm up to? Do they suspect my actual plan that, of course, I'm not really telling anyone about? And the conversation turns philosophical as they begin to discuss the scattering and the possibilities that lie in this endless universe that they are now exploring and sending Reverend Mothers and Bene Gesserit out into. Quote, "Ask what infinity might produce, and the only possible answer was anything." End quote.
I loved that quote.
Which is so good. Oh my gosh. Also, you think about Leto talking about 3,500 years seems like a long time until you compare it to infinity. You compare it to endless time, and then it becomes just another blip. his golden path goes far beyond 3,500 years. It goes to infinity. It goes forever. And the question is, how do you prepare a species for forever when literally anything can come out of that?
Yeah. And I think there's another layer to this quote too, because within the context of this conversation, what Belanda, Tamerlane, and Odrade are talking about is the scattering of their sisters out into the unknown, out into the infinite galaxy, right? And Belanda and Tamerlane are kind of like, what do you think's out there? What will happen? What could happen? What can we predict? What can we plan for? And Odrade's response here, I think, is quite powerful in that it's fruitless to try and project what's out there in infinity, in a galaxy that is so much larger than we can possibly fathom or predict for or plan for. There's no point in lining up the dominoes. We just have to take the leap of faith. We have to embrace the unknown and take a risk on this. So I thought there was an interesting layer here when it came to the actual scattering of the sisters themselves. And this very Bene Gesserit, Belanda, the archivist, need to plan and know versus Odrade pushing back and saying, hey, we're winging it. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes that is necessary. And we're in a war that we are losing. It is necessary.
Yeah. There's this quote, her advisors argued against tricky solutions. They said the sisterhood must move with steady assurance, the ground ahead known in advance. Everything they did lay counterpoised by the disaster awaiting them at the slightest misstep. End quote. The idea that we're talking about this, how do you prepare for infinity? What can come back from that universe? What can you encounter on that universe? And the idea that you must move with the ground ahead already known, that's just not possible in this universe.
No.
So that simple question of what...
That sounds dangerously prescient.
Yeah. That sounds like they're falling back on the same old patterns that led to Paul and led to fucking Leto. Like this is an order who has fundamentally not learned their lesson. And it's fascinating to see that sort of embodied by these different little moments with these very familiar characters having these conversations over and over again.
Truly.
As the three travel along the way, which is this kind of like central street, we get a sense of how much Odrade is really subtly and also overtly pushing the status quo, right? She is preoccupied with the danger presented in Bene Gesserit habits, the sort of typicals, as Scytale would call them, wondering if the lovely and comforting, beautiful, elm-lined tree street, right? This like picturesque, beautiful little neighborhood is too much of a pattern. Have we weakened ourselves by relying so heavily on these familiar settings and kind of reconstructing them every time? Well, Belanda finally confronts Odrade about Duncan Idaho. She's like, listen, he's a Mentat. That clearly means he's got serial memories. I think he's a Kwisatz Haderach, and you're not treating this as seriously as you should be. That could be the end of our order and the end of humanity. Odrade remarks, yeah, Duncan's a Mentat. He's a fine Mentat. But more important than being a Mentat, he's an inventor. He can see patterns and come up with new solutions. I don't need another person to remind me of what's in the archives and to tell me what history says and to look into their other memory. I need someone who comes up with solutions for tomorrow. And that's something that Duncan Idaho represents. She even says, quote, I am freeing his mind, not his body, end quote. I'm giving him the room to invent and to give us solutions. I'm not letting him loose. I'm not freeing him to the world, so he can become a giant sandworm. We're keeping him in check. Okay. Well, back in her office, she decides, okay, it's time. I'm going to let you in on the plan with a possible caveat here.
Right. Asterisk.
Giant asterisk. Font size 95 asterisk. All right. Tamerlane, Belanda. Hey, politics. And they're like, holy shit, she said the word. And then she pushes the buzzer and in comes Miles Teg, 10 years old, Gola, child. It's already such a badass. I love when Belanda's like snapping at him and he just like smiles and he's like, yeah, what's up? Love that little moment. And basically the plan is to break patterns. They have been too typical. They've been too much in their patterns, in their books, in their histories. Duncan Idaho is going to restore baby Teg's memories.
Whoa.
Too young? I don't think so. We need him. We need our Bashar now more than ever, which is also poetic, right? This is reversing the roles that we saw in Heretics.
Right.
Teg
Right.
awakening Duncan. Now Duncan will awaken Teg. And of course, Myrbella will also be there to assist, I guess, whatever that means. Now, while that process is at play, Odrade is hoping that Duncan's mind will be unlocked, freed a little bit with Myrbella on board. If, of course, at any point, that's starting to get a little Kwisatz Haderach-y. If you start to smell that Kwisatz Haderach smell in the air, they're going to pull the plug and they can kill him because, again, they free the mind, but they haven't freed the body. The body's right there. It's very vulnerable to knives and poison. So
exactly,
they can take care of that. Now, Teg, once restored, once back in his little body, can organize and lead a punishment force against the Honored Matre, right? The Bene Gesserit are losing this war. And something they haven't tried is a swift and violent movement against the Honored Matre. And maybe that is what it takes to sort of reset this cycle and to change up this trend of the Bene Gesserit slowly being eliminated planet by planet, right?
Yeah. Despite what Belanda's numbers show, despite everything pointing to their utter destruction if they do that.
Right.
I think this is a huge gamble on Odrade's part, to be clear. You know, like there is some validity to Belanda and Tamalane's pushback in saying, wait, we're not ready yet, though. What are you talking about?
Right.
We're going to move against the Honored Matre? We're here hiding on Chapterhouse because everything points to us getting our asses wiped if we do that.
Yeah.
So it is a bold move.
Yeah, it's insane. Nevertheless, as the chapter wraps up, it is clear that even though she's going, hey, here's the plan, I'm going to tell you the whole plan, she's not actually telling them the whole plan. It is clear that Odrade is still fucking up to stuff. She has all of these little moments where she's like, yeah, if this thing happens, then that's going to happen. And it's, oh, man, they have no idea. They've got no idea. And we're starting to have maybe an idea, but we're going to have to wait to find out. What a fucking good book. What a good book.
Yeah.
So good.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait. All right. Well, next up, we have a deep dive takeaway to get into. But before we do that, folks, let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're getting into our takeaways. And then, of course, later, we have some yummy spice morsels to chomp down on. Lots more to talk about. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, I hope you enjoyed your break. All right. Let's talk about the Bene Gesserit education.
Yes.
Myrbella is thinking about how different the educational systems of the Bene Gesserit and the Honored Matre are. Right? She is the outsider, giving us our perspective on the Bene Gesserit from the outsider's point of view. But she's also the best person to compare and contrast the Bene Gesserit way of doing things and the Honored Matre way of doing things.
Yeah.
And she is at, right now, as we are with her in chapter 11, she is beginning to see how inadequate her Honored Matre teachings were. Quote, I regurgitated on demand. That was called education. End quote.
Oof. Tough look.
Damn.
For the Honored Matres.
Also, we've talked about like good teachers versus bad teachers, good education versus bad in our personal experiences. I think both of us, I have a sympathy for that. The worst teachers I've had or the worst classes I've had have been the ones where it's like just regurgitate what you've been told, right? Like just, and you're not synthesizing it, you're not thinking, you're not engaging with it. It's just rote memorization. Brutal. That sucks. And that's the entire Honored Matre MO. That's rough. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now, Odrade observes how that method of teaching is actually typical of power-hungry societies. You teach people to avoid being decisive and independent and engaging with the information and questioning and being curious. And instead of all of those fun, good details and good qualities, they are simply compliant and they fall in line and they do what they're told.
Right.
You learn the things you learn. You regurgitate when you're told to. If you do that well, you'll move forward. And if you do that badly, you're going back a grade or whatever, right?
Yes.
And there's another interesting quote in this chapter from O'Drade that is clearly Frank Herbert, as always, getting a little bit onto his pedestal, his soapbox he basically moved onto midway through, I think probably the second book, sharing his views on educational systems. And we want to spend some time today unpacking it and talking about how like Frank's own perspectives maybe bleed into this chapter, but also kind of where we sit with this information and this perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think what's kind of interesting here, a little behind the scenes for you folks, is we're working on an upcoming episode about this interview that Frank did in 1981 with Mother Earth News Magazine. And a lot of what he says in that interview is extremely applicable to today's takeaway and this idea around education. So sort of a happy coincidence that we happen to be doing that research right now as we are covering this chapter. So we're going to be referencing that interview quite a bit to help illustrate the ideas here. But let's start by just talking about this quote from O'Drade. This is how it starts. Quote, educational bureaucracies dull a child's questing sensitivity. The young must be damped down. Never let them know how good they can be. That brings change. End quote.
Oh my God. God forbid change.
That's only the first couple sentences of this longer quote. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. God forbid change. God forbid the kids know how good they can be, that they can fulfill their potential. And it's clear here that O'Drade / Frank's basic criticisms of this type of highly bureaucratic educational system fall into a couple of key categories. One, that this type of system suppresses creativity, right? Dulls a child's questing sensitivity. Two, that it rewards conformity. The young must be damped down. They must never be told how good they can be. Good enough to perhaps push back on a system?
Yeah.
And three, that final line, that brings change. The third category, the third criticism here appears to be that bureaucratic systems of education ultimately serve political or larger institutional goals that are not necessarily about bringing out the best potential in their students. And what's interesting is from this chapter, we get a sense that the Bene Gesserit, to some extent, do the opposite of those things. They teach their acolytes that they do have great potential beyond even what they can imagine.
Yeah.
And that is why they should always be pushing to their own personal limits. The acolytes are always pushed to their limits and just slightly beyond so that they can become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
It is a pretty inspiring way to teach. It reminds me very much of My Hero Academia, right? Go plus ultra, go beyond.
Yeah, even further beyond. I also think about like we watched Faradin being basically wooed over to the Bene Gesserit. Again, another example like Merbella of an outsider being inducted into Bene Gesserit ways of thinking and being made Bene Gesserit. And for Faradin, those first early exercises were just about visualization. We're just looking at your hand becoming a child, becoming an old person, and that imagination and opening up those possibilities. Also, we talked before we recorded about Frieren, which is all about magic and mage and society. It's like, how much can you picture the thing happening? And if you can imagine it happening, if that's even a possibility, it is much more a possibility than if you start off thinking you're not going to succeed. Like, there's a real hard limit to what you believe is possible. And if you teach people, you know, that's like how they break elephants, right? It's like they tack them down with the rope on the peg when they're too small to like pull the post out. But then when they're older, they've learned that they can't pull the post out already.
Right.
So they don't even know that they can just escape.
Right.
Again, you teach them that lesson early so that they don't question. And because they don't question, they're stuck in that power dynamic, basically. Yeah. It's
Exactly.
So resonant.
Exactly.
That's cool.
It's really interesting stuff. And this is where I want to bring in that 1981 interview with Mother Earth News Magazine that we've been researching, because there's a lot of interesting criticism here. Those three buckets that I mentioned earlier, the suppressing of creativity, the rewarding of conformity, the serving of political goals, that criticism very much aligns with what we know of Frank Herbert's general views, right? His distrust of bureaucracy and centralized authority. And in particular, his views on education come up in that 1981 interview. And I want to share a quote from that interview that I think is very relevant. This is about his criticisms of the American education system. Quote, "The teaching of our young ought to be about equally divided between the family, which should lay the groundwork for a child's learning, and professionals, who can pass on useful knowledge that the child's relatives might not have in their repertoire. Today, though, the professional education establishment assumes that the family doesn't know what its own members need or want. The result is a classic failure, an institutionalized system that does more harm than good." End quote.
Yeah.
Those are the words of Frank himself in that interview. And in fact, later on in that interview, he goes on to talk about how he actually moved his family out of the country multiple times. He moved to Mexico so that he'd be allowed to homeschool his children. He wasn't allowed to do that because he was told he wasn't qualified to do that in the United States. And so he said, "Fuck you, I'm moving," and raised and taught his kids himself in Mexico.
Yeah. And honestly, like this criticism from O'Drade really, but also from Frank in this interview does have some merit, right? Like when we talk about the modern educational system and the system that was developing over the last 100 years or so, but especially here in the United States, like there are some big problems with it. And you pulled up this 2006 TED Talk, which is the late author and renowned educator, Sir Ken Robinson, who made the case basically for supporting children's creativity.
Yeah.
Quote, "All kids have tremendous talents, and we squander them pretty ruthlessly. My contention is that creativity now is as important in education as literacy, and we should treat it with the same status." End quote. Joke's on him. 19 years later, literacy also not taken super seriously here in the U.S. So fucking get dunked on, Sir Ken Robinson, if that is your real name. Yeah, no, jokes aside, legitimately, I also fully agree with that. I think the idea of like creativity, believing that you can do stuff, being curious, having that kind of playful quality, it's all so important. And again, ultimately is something that the educational system should have built into it. I'm very privileged to have gone to a charter school, which was able to kind of define its own curriculum. And because of that, holy shit, I started with such an advantage in the arts and in creative arenas because I just had early exposure to it as part of my education. It was like so useful. So again, fully agree. I mean, like hard agree on that for sure.
Same. It's a really great TED Talk. It's only about 20 minutes. I highly recommend folks look it up. It's, again, Sir Ken Robinson in a 2006 TED Talk on creativity in the educational system. He talks about this really wonderful story where this woman's daughter basically is told that her child is struggling in school and has trouble paying attention, blah, blah, sort of like the classic, like, this kid is not good at school, something's wrong with him. And she then seeks help. She's like, is something wrong with my daughter? Like, let's go to a doctor. Let's get some diagnoses. Let's figure this out. And the doctor basically is like in the room with the daughter. And then he says, I'm going to go outside and talk to your mom real quick. He turns on the radio, walks outside, talks to the mom. And the mom's like, oh, what's wrong? What's the diagnosis? And he says, nothing's wrong. Look at her. And she's in the room dancing. And he says, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's just a very good dancer and not a very good student in the current educational system. Take her to dance classes. And this woman is the person who choreographed Cats.
Whoa, shit. Oh, cool.
And went on to like choreograph and create her own like Broadway dance company. And is like a very successful multimillionaire like dance instructor and businesswoman, you know? And all it took was somebody to recognize that she's not failing as a student because she is dumb or inadequate, but it's because her education is not speaking her language.
Sure.
Her language, the way she sees the world, the way she interprets life is through dance. She needs to go to dance school and be allowed to let that flourish. So, you know, that's one anecdotal example, but I think in general that illustrates Robinson's point in this TED Talk, this idea that like, just because you can't do a pop quiz on math very well does not mean you're inadequate. It could just mean that you are a different type of learner.
Yeah.
And that's something that the educational system needs to embrace en masse, across the nation.
Yeah.
I think individual schools,
Yeah.
I think both of us actually have been quite lucky to have gone to really good schools. I went to what I later learned was the wealthiest public school district in all of Ohio. And so we had a lot of resources. I went to these extracurricular classes where I was just told to like make videos. And that's like the whole reason I'm in audio and video production today.
Yeah.
Because I was just given like an hour a day every single day at school to just like fuck around with cameras and like make stupid little videos that then like sometimes got aired on TV, on the like school TV system.
Yeah. I will say kind of my hot take is I don't believe talent exists, or I think it's like a frequently misused word that implies some sort of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, born thing, magic that you just, oh, you're good at music. And it's like, I think it is so poorly understood, the myriad influences that can lead someone to having, say, for instance, having that kind of relationship to dance and to music and to rhythm and to feeling it and everything. Like, I think that's frequently misunderstood, especially as someone who's spent my whole life doing like art and music. It's like, I look back on the hours and hours and hours I've spent doing it all. And it's like, yeah, it is, ironically, it's math. It's the amount of time you put into it. And so one of the things that I maintain is like the idea of talent is just how much like fuel in the tank do you have for that thing? If you find yourself constantly comfortable writing and you can just write for hours and hours and hours, yeah, okay, I feel comfortable saying you're a talented writer because you have what it takes to put the hours in to become better and to, whatever. Again, we don't need to get into that whole conversation, but I do think that like when we talk about children, they apply themselves to dance or they apply themselves to music or whatever. I think being sensitive to those appetites when they're children and then giving them outlets for those appetites is so critical, is so, so important. And you've even pulled up this idea, right? Like studies have shown that IQ scores are generally trending upward. People are doing better. In some places, I feel like the US is maybe stagnating a bit or maybe not doing so hot. But creativity is beginning to drop and is kind of dropping off, which began in the 90s. And critics primarily are kind of blaming the renewed focus on standardized testing, which, man, what a gross couple of words. Because for sure, I get it. I understand it.
Yeah.
I think the standardized testing as a focus of the educational system in the United States, the policies like No Child Left Behind, these are things that have caused maybe a little bit less of the case by case, we're going to let everyone thrive in their own way, and more of, but you actually have to get a really good score on the SATs. And if you don't, we're going to take away resources from you. And we're not going to give you opportunities to thrive if you can't fucking do this math test the way that we want you to.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like one perspective. And it's one that I think, carries some water for sure, has some validity behind it. It's not the whole picture, of course, but it's one that is definitely worth remembering as we talk about all of this.
Yeah. And very in line with Frank's criticism here.
Yeah.
In the book and his criticisms in the Mother Earth News magazine article about the educational system. I think the data has shown that highly bureaucratic education systems that do focus heavily on standardized testing and scores, that do pare down curriculum to focus on particular parts of intelligence, that ignore other parts of intelligence, do hamper creativity, do reward conformity. Like people who succeed in those systems are just the people who happen to be good at those systems. Your dancer might not be able to do the goddamn arithmetic that's required for this standardized test, and then maybe is never put in a position where she can go and choreograph huge Broadway plays because she was never given those opportunities because, she's a failure. She can't do this math test to the level that we require her to.
Yeah.
That is where the problem comes in, and I think that is a very valid criticism from Frank here about the education system.
Yeah, agreed.
Too much focus on that becomes more harmful than helpful. On the other hand, I do want to call out Odrade/Frank's assertion in this quote here, though, that education systems are just these like nefarious state tools that push government policies and conformity to a certain mindset in society. That is a little bit overblown. And I think in general, like when you look into Frank's criticisms of the education system, he does tend to overlook the potential benefits of an education system that is implemented correctly and with the best intent, right? An equitable public education system can do things like push the needle, even if slightly, on social mobility, which is ultimately positive. It can also, and I think this is really powerful, create a more informed and ideally more involved citizenry, right? Which is crucial for any healthy functioning democracy out there. You want people who know what they're talking about or can go out and seek and learn what they need to and have the tools to do that. You want a citizenry that is able to participate in society and democracy in that way.
Yeah, versus 100% dancers.
Versus 100% dancers, right? There are positives to having robust public education systems that have rigorous testing and that ultimately are a good for society. And I think like Frank likes to focus in on the criticisms of where it constantly goes wrong and will often overlook the positive aspects of it too. So just hand waving away that public education is just propaganda from the government is a little much.
No kidding. Well, Audrey, back to kind of the spark that started this fire, the conversation. Audrey's quote to Merbella continues, quote, "Spend lots of committee time talking about how to deal with exceptional students. Don't spend any time dealing with how the conventional teacher feels threatened by emerging talents and squelches them because of a deep-seated desire to feel superior and safe in a safe environment." End quote.
Okay.
And that it feels a little bit more straight from his personal perspective.
That's bold.
I do think the idea that it is the conventional teacher who is feeling threatened by emerging talents and squelches them because of a deep-seated desire to feel superior, that's painting with a very broad brush and doing so in a way that I don't think is justified. Yep. I can think legitimately of friends who are now teachers who have maybe a little bit of that, like they enjoy the feeling of being the one at the front of the class who's like has all the answers and has that kind of power dynamic with the students. And if a student's like, you're wrong about this, it's a moment of really being challenged. But like to say that that's the conventional teacher is crazy. I think that's insane. Right. Yeah.
That's crazy talk. Yeah. And, again, this makes me think of a quote from the Mother Earth News magazine article that seems to really speak to how this very likely stems from just Frank's own personal experiences and is not based in any sort of actual large-scale data about teachers. In that article, he shares this story where he got detention after class at one point and the teacher yelled at him and how it really left a lasting impression on him. Quote, "She grabbed me by the shoulders, began shaking me roughly and cried, 'I'm not mad at you! I'm not mad at you!' Well, I now know that teachers get long lectures during their training on the importance of keeping their tempers with their students. I may not have understood that at the time, but I didn't have a bit of trouble realizing that my teacher, who was repeatedly screaming, 'I'm not mad at you,' was nearly out of her mind with rage. That incident drove home the lesson that what people say often doesn't agree with what they actually do. And that discovery played a big part in the shaping of my thinking and behavior." End quote.
Good. What did he do to that poor woman? What did Frank Herbert? He set fire to her car.
He doesn't detail it in the interview. He says he got caught doing a prank. It's unclear what the prank was.
Yeah. He burned her house down. Yeah. He was like, "Funny prank. I killed your whole family." She's like, "I'm not mad at you."
Yeah. I mean, it's like that is good sad, Lord. Right? Like that is awful that a young boy, Frank, unknown age, but he was young enough to be crying. He said he was crying in detention.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to victim blame. I'm sure it was traumatic, and there's no reason for a teacher to ever put their hands on a student.
No, absolutely not. This teacher acted out of line, but then to say like this is how all teachers are is a bold leap of logic.
Typical. He's like, every teacher whose house I burned down was always like this.
They were always so mad
dramatic.
At me. Like, what?
So mad at me. Ugh, teachers.
Can you
so
just chill? It's just
on it.
arson.
Can
God
you?
Damn.
It's just art. It's just a bit of arson. It's not even a lot of arson.
Right. Ding dong
bit.
ditch arson. Like, come on.
Like
kids are kids.
You toilet paper someone's house and then you burn it down. That's the pattern. Why are you yelling?
So I just found it, again, really interesting and kind of coincidental that this quote from O'Drade came up in today's reading about teachers being threatened and wanting to feel superior in class. And then in the research that we're doing for this upcoming episode about this magazine article, he literally illustrates an incident where a teacher yells at him and makes him feel less than. And so it clearly shaped his mindset, which he admits himself in the quote, obviously. So, sort of wrapping up these ideas and bringing it to a close, you already said it, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think, like, yes, anecdotally, you might have the one-off teacher who maybe loses control of their emotions. Teachers are still people. Kids are very difficult to work with, as if anyone has experience with that, But to be clear, as far as I could find, there is no data, there is no research that suggests teachers universally suppress gifted students out of some sort of fear or out of some sort of drive towards self-preservation, as O'Drade asserts in this quote. There's nothing that supports that I could find. And in fact, I found evidence to the contrary, to the fact that many teachers actually actively support their most gifted students and their most creative learners, and especially in wealthier districts and wealthier school systems where they have the more advanced tools and training to be able to support their most gifted students, they actively do that and they push for that more often. So, in fact, the opposite is true to what O'Drade is asserting here. There is no reason to believe that teachers hate their most gifted students.
I will share. So as someone who taught classes for about a little over a decade, the one thing I will say is one of the challenges I had often, and I think people can relate to this, is you do feel sometimes like you need to justify why you're the one teaching. There needs to be that kind of recognition of like you're the one at the front of the class for a reason.
Yeah, right.
In the world of like teaching technology classes, oftentimes that was like, I do need to demonstrate that I know what I'm talking about. There's a reason why I'm a teacher, or like why I'm the coach, or why I'm the facilitator. So what I could understand is Frank, maybe especially young Frank, who had never taught himself, saw someone say, try to keep the sort of gravitas of I'm in charge, and then misinterpret it through that lens, that kind of naive lens of they're feeling challenged and intimidated by that smart student who keeps burning their house down. They're so intimidated whenever they burn down their house. And I'm like, oh, stop being intimidated by your smart students. I think that like, it feels like an incomplete picture of what educators are. And you do have to like, you have to be able to control the room of children. One of my friends directs children. He has like 60 13-year-old boys in a choir. He has to get them to like, and again, it's like, you have to be able to rally them and get them to shut the fuck up sometimes. Right. And so there is like you do need something. And so it's like how you kind of arrest that something, I'm sure could be misinterpreted by someone who's never had to do that themselves.
Yeah. I think this also really speaks to Frank's personal experiences. Like I can relate actually to being like an arrogant little shithead in class. I was very much an arrogant little shithead in many of my classes. I remember going to a counselor in college one time and being like, I don't want to take the class. It's making me dumber. This is stupid.
Sweet.
Like I just said that to the counselor's face, and I think back, and sure honestly, she handled it really well. She was just like, well, then I suggest you sit down and do the math on how many classes you can skip to still just pass, and just do that.
Damn. Hell yeah.
She handled it so well because I was being such an arrogant asshole.
Yeah.
Like imagine walking in and being like, your class is making me dumber. I don't want to take it. But I understand, like, when you are like young and arrogant and think you know it all, and you've been told your whole life that you are smart, that you are an honor student, an AP class student, you're the best of the best. Frank, I can imagine, was very much a talented student, very smart. And so like when he found himself bored, or when the education system wasn't speaking to him at his level, or pushing his creativity, I'm sure he'd like push back. I'm sure he was like, this is fucking stupid. I don't want to be here. And I really feel some of that energy within these quotes from O'Drade, and within the writing here, that some of young Frank, like middle school, grade school Frank, is coming out here. Somebody who was like bored in class and would then push back against their teachers. And when the teachers got mad, would be like, well, fuck you. You're just threatened by me because I'm smarter than you. But I think to wrap up the ideas, I do think O'Drade / Frank's critiques of bureaucracy, educational bureaucracies in general, are very valid and actually very true. And we should really, really be focused on it at a systemic and policy level. But I think like when you hone down to an individual teacher by teacher level, that's where some of Frank's critiques begin to fall apart. And in general, what I learned working on this takeaway and from my research for this episode, in general, teachers fail when the system fails, not the other way around. And that is where we should be focusing our efforts, on the systems that support the teachers who then support the students.
Yeah. It's also worth noting, like the Bene Gesserit are not modeling an educational system that works for everyone. They, by their own fucking design, are picking the top 1% of students.
That's right.
And going, we're gonna take you away from the fucking dirty masses and we ignore them. They get to squander in their fucking muck or whatever. We're gonna like give you your tailored education. We're gonna hone your talents. Meet you where you are. And
it's
all
very elitist. Yes.
It's so privileged.
Yeah.
And so elitist.
Yeah. The Bene Gesserit are not running public schools, to be clear. Like they're not dealing with public school problems.
Like I think canonically, part of how they ingratiated themselves to the universe is that they had these sort of schools for students, but still their whole fucking thing, and especially at O'Drade's level, is handpicking the students and then giving them that tailored experience.
Great point, Leo.
So it's worth noting that like they're talking from a very high horse named Streggy. They're atop the shoulders of Streggy, and they can't even fucking see the ground anymore, let alone give like a good take that is a scalable solution for everyone.
Yeah.
So again, no one is here with the full solution, right?
But I think ultimately Marbella is sold, bringing this back to Dune, this idea of education. Marbella is sold on the Bene Gesserit systems of learning because they might be elitist, they might be selective, maybe they aren't applicable at a large public education level, but for what they want to achieve, they do it really, really well. It's an education system that's focused on candor and honesty and fostering creativity and pushing their already elite students to even greater elite heights. And I think that's something that Marbella recognizes. It's something that she didn't get in the Honored Matre teachings.
Right, yeah.
And it has sold her. And there is something to be learned there, that there are lessons we can take from how the Bene Gesserit are teaching and apply them to better our larger scale education systems. Some big ideas from Frank here. I really appreciated it.
I did too. Well, excellent takeaway. Love kind of looking at, again, I think when we talk about these books, they are sci-fi books. They're fun books. There's futars and necks getting kicked and flip darts and all sorts of fun shit. But ultimately, Frank was an author who wrote because he had things to say about society. Yes. And it's always fun to kind of peel back the layers a bit and go, yeah, this is a book about space, drugs, and messiahs and politics, but it's also a book about society. And I think today, in 2025, it is still worthwhile to look at these ideas and to apply them to our world around us. We are, of course, going to continue talking about that as the book continues, and we will come back to it many times, I'm sure.
Definitely.
We are going to head to our spice morsels, but first, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere. Dear listener, when we're back,
yes,
we're talking wood and birds. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, folks. Let's round out today's episode and today's excellent discussion by chomping down on two very yummy spice morsels, one of which is bird-themed. So to start, morsel number one. let's talk about
Yeah.
GMO wooden beams.
Ooh, nice.
So in today's reading, we get this little aside about the wooden beams that are used to build this acolyte hall on Chapterhouse, where Odrade is having dinner. Quote, somewhere on Chapterhouse, there was a grove of genetically tailored oaks reaching up to sunlight in their carefully tended plantations, trees going up 30 meters at least without a limb, and more than 2 meters through the boles. They had been planted when this hall was built, replacements for these beams when age weakened them. 1900 standard years the beams were supposed to endure. End quote.
Damn. All
Very
right.
cool.
Yeah.
That is some very fun world building for Dune, but
Yeah.
I think it got both of us wondering about trees.
Yeah.
Are there actually trees that live for 1900 years and are usable even after 1900 years?
Yeah.
As
I was like, is that a
building
long time?
structures? Like, is this
is
a
crazy long time? Or
is that short? I don't
sounds
know.
long, but I don't know.
So you did some, I'm going to give you all the credit here. You did some really wonderful tree research.
Tree search.
There it is. And we came up with somewhat of an answer to that question. Is 1900 years a realistic expectation for a tree to live and still be used as a support beam in a hall, in a big dining hall? The answer, though, of course, is complicated as always. At first, you dug up this article about the Colombo structure, these wooden beams that were found in Zambia dating back 476,000 years.
Crazy. Yeah.
But to be clear, these beams aren't supporting any weight anymore, so they're not like structurally relevant if you're an architect.
Right.
They're just very old beams.
Yeah.
So shifting focus to wooden structures that are still standing today.
Mhm.
One name that comes up a lot is the Horyuji Gakumanji, which is a Buddhist temple, which was burned down in 670 AD, but was then rebuilt. And the main hall of that temple is still standing.
Yeah.
Which clocks in roughly at about 1,300 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those beams are still up, baby.
Yeah. They're still standing. I'm still standing.
Now, Atlas Obscura describes the longevity of this temple in this way. Quote, architects had the foresight and knowledge to choose hinoki or cypress wood known for its resilience and durability for construction. It said Horyuji is as strong today as it was when it was first hewn. End quote.
Crazy.
Wow.
Insane.
1,300 years later.
Going strong. 1,300 years.
Now, when you look into those cypress trees, those Japanese hinoki cypress, you learn that they're quite rot resistant and can last over 1,000 years. And so these might actually be the closest real world analogy that we have to these Bene Gesserit oaks that Odrade is observing in the hall. And if we extrapolate within the Dune universe, it's not hard to imagine that by the time of Odrade and Belanda and Tamlane, thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the future, they've advanced tree technology enough to be able to double the longest lasting timber that we have today. If a Japanese hinoki cypress can last 1,000 years, I'm sure the Bene Gesserit have figured out a way to make a tree last 2,000.
Yeah, pretty good.
It's super fun. And to wrap up this morsel, one final thought here about this point about the trees. The Bene Gesserit, as we know, have always been characterized as these long-term planners. Their plans are made in centuries. They clearly treat their construction and their architecture in the same way, with the same sort of care. They have built a hall with replacement trees that will be ready in 2,000 years when this hall is no longer ready. That illustrates the Bene Gesserit mindset and the way this organization has operated for centuries, but it also, in this book, thematically speaking, illustrates some of the dangers that Odrade is thinking about, right? These typical patterns of the Bene Gesserit. Oh, of course they do long-term planning. If they have oaks in this hall that will last for 2,000 years, you can easily assume they got a 2,000-year plantation of trees somewhere else. That's how they always work. That's something, if you are their enemy, you can use against them. So it does seem quite evocative that this detail is in this book, in Odrade's thoughts, as she is worrying in these chapters about the patterns the Bene Gesserit constantly find themselves falling in. That long-term planning is one of those patterns.
Yeah, I had so much fun learning about that. Also, just because like there is so much to. There's like lots of conversations in Japan about like why they use so much wood, and like as a country that has a lot of earthquakes and fires and it's volcanic, there's like lots of reasons why wood structures are not necessarily the most logical choice. But even though they had bricklaying technology, they were still using wood for a lot of these temples that are still standing, and some of the oldest standing wooden structures in the world, period, like full stop. It's fascinating stuff. Well, our second morsel today, orioles and tanagers. Woo, birds. In our final chapter today, Odrade, Tamerlane, and Belanda are inspecting Chapterhouse. They're walking around. We get this little blurb, quote, "Down the center ran a line of elms, genetically tailored for height and narrow profile. Birds nested in them, and the morning was bright with flitting spots of red and orange. Orioles, tanagers." End quote. So off the cuff, I was like, Oriole? That's a bird. I'm pretty sure that's a bird. That's a baseball bird.
Baseball.
But tanagers, is that a bird? Probably a bird. Never heard of it. I was like, tannins? Like the wine? No. Tangolins? No, I don't know. Tanagers. All right, sure. So I decided to look into it to see if there's any kind of like stuff to glean, like the world building again that Frank is doing. Why did he choose those birds? Why those birds and not others, right? So starting with orioles,
right.
They are small birds, black feathers, but they do have in their plumage spots of bright orange and yellow. So lots of really bright colors in addition to the black feathers. They were first formally described back in 1758, and orioles are still basically localized entirely in the US and Canada, kind of the northeast-ish kind of area.
Mm-hmm.
Their diet is mostly insects and fruits, but new favorite website, allaboutbirds.org says, please sponsor us, allaboutbirds.org. Love that URL. That's great.
Yeah, we'll throw bird facts into every episode if you sponsor us. We're ready.
Starting now. I love bird facts. So allaboutbirds.org says, quote, "Unlike robins and many other fruit-eating birds, Baltimore orioles seem to prefer only ripe, dark-colored fruit. Orioles seek out the darkest mulberries, the reddest cherries, and the deepest purple grapes, and will ignore green grapes and yellow cherries, even if they are ripe."
Yeah.
End quote. Thank you.
Honestly, call me an oriole. Fuck green grapes.
Dude, fuck them. Yeah, call me an oriole all
grapes
day long.
Grapes are supposed to be purple. The deepest of purple.
The deepest and sweetest of grapes. Thanks, allaboutbirds.org. Now, again, final facts about orioles. They are the state bird of Maryland and the namesake, of course, of the MLB team, the Major League Baseball team, the Baltimore Orioles, who happened to win the world. I was wondering, okay, were they named that when Frank was writing this book? Was this like a known team? Very, very much so. They were named that. And not only were the Baltimore Orioles around, they won the World Series in 1983.
Whoa!
At about the time that Frank would have been writing this book. So I wonder if Frank was a closeted Baltimore Orioles fan. I'm not saying he is. I don't super care about sports, but like, hey, it's possible.
Wow, that's a fun fact. I love that.
Now, moving on, tanagers, the lesser known of the birds, I would say. This is a family of birds containing 4% of all avian species, which is crazy. It's a very large group of bird species, but they are broadly characterized as being small to medium-sized, brightly colored. There are scarlet tanagers who are like bright red. There are other types that are all basically any color you can imagine. And they also subsist on fruits and insects. Quick note, I was like, wait, do all birds eat fruit? And I looked it up. No, all birds do not eat fruit. For instance, sparrows, seeds, and insects. They don't eat fruit. So only some birds eat fruit. Because there are so many types of tanagers, can't really talk too much about them because that's too much information. But it is worth noting, also South America.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Dune.
Unless we get sponsored by allaboutbirds.org, then we will talk about every single tanager out there.
We're going to hard pivot via bird podcast. Goodbye, dude. Back to birds. So, because we have not yet been sponsored by allaboutbirds.org, let's talk about Dune again.
Yeah, alas.
Alas, not yet. Now you have, dear listener, an opportunity to, you can look up these birds, you can look up tanagers, you can look up orioles, and you can picture this beautiful elm-lined street that have these birds, these colorful little birds flitting their little wings, filling your imagination. I do want to point out that these two birds that Frank chose to name have diets that include fruit, which feels perfect for a planet that has orchards, fruit orchards, vast Bene Gesserit driven fruit orchards. Feels notable, this diet and the availability of fruit going hand in hand. And also, nothing the Bene Gesserit do is haphazard, right? They're not fucking around. They're always doing something with plans within plans within plans.
Oh, certainly.
Kind of the theme of this book. So Lyco Drade wonders, quote, is it dangerously patterned for us to prefer this familiar setting? End quote. I wonder how much these colorful, pleasant, beautiful little birds that eat fruit and eat insects, how much are they part of this broader pattern? How much are they part of the lovely, familiar, how many chapter houses over the tens of thousands of years have had these elm-lined streets with these colorful little birds that actually go back to North America and South America, respectively? It's possible. It is fully possible, dear listener, that the Bene Gesserit have brought the birds with them to every subsequent planet to have these familiar settings.
I don't doubt it.
For the insects they eat, for the diets they have, all of that. And how much is that a part of the problem? How much of that is part of this pattern that they need to break? The next planet, all crows and ostriches. They're like,
that's right,
fully flightless. Kiwis and ostriches.
Totally random birds.
Allaboutbirds.org.
Do you have a favorite bird, Leo?
Oh, I'm a huge sucker for ravens and crows. I like the corvids. Okay. Corvid families. I love ravens and crows. Ravens are great. What about you? Do you have a favorite bird?
I don't, but I'm quickly panicking and Googling best bird. Let's see what comes up.
Hank Green loves pelicans. They're pretty weird. Owls.
Okay.
Owls
here we go.
cool.
Reddit, the birding Reddit. It's so dang hard to pick your favorite bird. What are your top 10?
Oh,
what?
Damn. Okay, look through that top 10. Which one jumps out at you as your favorite?
Okay.
I will say kiwis are excellent birds.
The hooded warbler. Hold on. I'm going to Google what a hooded warbler is.
Hooded,
he's cute.
Hooded warbler.
You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon here. Hooded warbler.
Okay. Wow. Hooded warbler bandwagoner over here. Of course, when they're up top, you're here.
They're going to win the World Series.
The second they lose a fucking game, you disappear. You're like, oh, never mind. I like Eagles again. Fucking basic.
Oh, incredible. What a great takeaway. Great job on that research. Love some bird facts.
Yeah, huge fan of bird facts.
All right, folks. That wraps it up for today's episode. A truly fun one, a great set of chapters, and I've had a great time breaking it down in this conversation with you, Leo. Dear listener, though, we have homework for you. For the next book club episode, folks, submit your questions because we got a mailbag coming up.
Oh, shit.
This will be, we like to pause a couple of times during our reading and really take in what we've read.
Yeah.
And so this is a great time for you to submit your questions. Yes, about Chapterhouse Dune. That's primarily what we'll focus on in that episode, but about Dune at large. And of course, we also love the occasional off-topic question. At one point, someone asked about our favorite ice cream or whether we liked pulp in our orange juice, and that nearly divided this podcast in two. So please submit any and all questions. Yes, Chapterhouse related. Yes, Dune related, but also off-topic ones as well.
Yeah.
Email them, send them via Discord, tweet at us, carrier pigeon,
Blue Sky, whatever. Yeah.
For the next book club episode, make sure you've read the next 3 chapters of this book, 16, 17, and 18. But if your copy of the book is a little bit different than ours, then read up to the chapter that ends on the sentence, quote, "The horde of Lampadas, venting emotions it had confined for many generations," end quote. Something tells me we're going to be back with Lucilla, the unkillable, undefeatable Lucilla.
Going strong. going strong like that hooded warbler. Yeah. Until
I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, before we let you go, dear listener, we want to remind you of some ways to support us and what we do here at Gom Jabbar and to keep in touch with us. And of course, the two best ways to support us is to become a patron over at patreon.com/GomJabbar. And of course, we have a merchandise store. It's currently down, but we're working on it. Those links are in the show notes. Every little bit that you can do helps us out. We really appreciate it.
We do indeed. And of course, a quick reminder that the best way to keep in touch with us is to email us, gomjabbarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, send us your questions, send us pictures of your cute birds, I guess.
Yeah. Send us your favorite bird. Dear listeners, I want to hear your favorite birds. In our live chat, Normal Senva said the secretary bird is their favorite bird. These are excellent. Have you seen these, Abu? They have really,
I just
really...
Googled it, and this dude is a freak.
They're great. Love them. They've got really long little legs, and they curl up their little claws, and they punch snakes in the head, and they kill snakes by punching them in the head with their feet. They're so great. If only there was a word for when you punch someone with your foot. But anyway, it's delightful. And there's whole videos of having like rubber snakes and them just like, and very honored matre-like the way those secretary birds kick, you know?
Very cool.
Very, very cool.
Damn, yeah. I want to know all
That's
about
a great
birds.
Bird.
Email them.
Allaboutbirds.org sponsor us.
You see how I snuck that in? Real subtle, you know?
Yeah, dude, I want to learn all about birds.
We can do for you all about birds.
I'd love.
Okay, the sponsorship can be so subtle.
Natural integration. Oh, I just love learning all about birds. Peddling.org. Do you want to learn a little bit about?
I've set my homepage on Safari to allaboutbirds.org.
It's the first thing I do in every new computer.
Every time I open a web browser, I get distracted by birds.
For fun, I go to Apple stores and I set all the computers to allaboutbirds.org, just to spread the good bird, spread the good bird.
Yeah, I am banned from at least 47 Apple stores in the country, but...
Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic. So help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. We're also on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the Golden